c'est avec beaucoup d'émotion que j'accueille Yassmin Abdel-Magied, autrice, ingénieure et militante primée pour la justice sociale. Elle est soudano-australienne. Merci encore à nos interprètes en langue des signes française. Merci à vous. Et merci également à Lucie qui va vous faire l'interprétation en anglais. Je vous dis ça juste après. Donc, Yassmin, you speak a little bit French. Vous parlez un petit peu français.
Un petit peu, hein?
Comment ça va?
Oui, ça va, oui, ça va. Je suis humble d'être ici avec vous tous, avec Lallab, mais en fait, je dois dire avant de commencer que je trouve le travail Lallab fantastique et très, très, très inspirant. Masha'Allah.
Ah, merci Yassmin, c'est adorable. Thank you so much. So I will introduce you in French because I know you want so badly.
Ah oui, exact.
And I promise after that I will continue in English. Donc Yassmin Abdel-Magied est autrice, ingénieure et militante, donc primée pour la justice sociale. Elle a publié notamment ses premiers mémoires, donc Yassmin Stories, aux éditions Penguin Random House à 24 ans. Elle a poursuivi avec sa première fiction pour la jeunesse You Must Be Layla en 2019. Et la suite, Listen Layla, devrait sortir bientôt en 2021. Et voilà, ces deux livres vont être sélectionnés pour l'écran à la télévision. Yassmin a également fondé sa première organisation Jeunesse sans frontières à l'âge de 16 ans et l'a dirigée pendant plus de 9 ans. Et depuis, elle a cofondé notamment de nombreuses autres organisations. Elle partage ses apprentissages à travers vraiment des discours et des ateliers un peu partout dans le monde. Elle s'est exprimée dans plus de 20 pays sur les questions justement de sexisme, de racisme et d'islamophobie. Son discours TEDx « Que signifie mon foulard pour vous ?» a été visionné plus de 2 millions de fois et a été l'un des 10 meilleurs TEDx en 2015. Et enfin, à la télévision, Yassmin est la présentatrice notamment de l'émission nationale d'actualité Australia Wide. Elle a été l'animatrice du documentaire révolutionnaire The Truth About Racism et elle a créé Hijabista, une série qui a été consacrée du coup à la modest fashion en Australie. Elle est également une commentatrice régulière des nouvelles et des affaires sur la BBC, sur Al Jazeera et a présenté divers programmes de radio, notamment sur la BBC World. Donc, à partir de maintenant, pour celles et ceux qui souhaitent activer l'interprétation pour écouter Yassmin en français, il faut du coup aller dans la barre des tâches en bas de votre écran. Vous choisissez l'onglet interprétation, donc il y a un petit symbole avec un globe et vous pouvez cliquer sur français. Et voilà, donc pour ensuite, si vous souhaitez écouter Yassmin directement en anglais, vous n'avez vraiment rien à faire. Donc, Lucie, peut-être peux-tu nous faire un petit coucou, qui va être notre interprète? Merci mille fois, Lucie, et du coup, bon courage pour l'interprétation. Okay, let's start. So, Yassmin, while preparing this talk, we shared common struggles as Muslim women living in Europe or in Australia. And today, more than ever, we need some hope. We need some international solidarity with our feminist sisters. And we know that we have so much to learn from you, and we wanted to know what are the lessons that you can share from your work, and even from your mistakes maybe that we could benefit. And because our theme today is the believers, so maybe what do you believe in to create a real social justice? So the floor is yours for a 10-minute talk, and then we will take some questions from our audience. So thank you.
Merci. Merci Sarah. Salam alaikum à tous. En fait, j'allais essayer de parler en français, mais je suis encore en train de prendre. Je suis pas encore arrivée. Donc, merci pour votre patience avec moi. Alors, en anglais. So, as you heard, I was born in Sudan and I grew up in Australia. My family was the second Sudanese family in the town that I grew up in called Brisbane. And you know, the next family didn't come till 10 years later. So we were very much like the only Sudanese, the only African people in town. And I always say that everyone was like, where did they come from? You know, we were very much the strangers in the village, as it were. And I went to a Muslim primary school and a Christian and ecumenical high school. But I think, alhamdulillah, one of the things that that are the themes of my life really is that I grew up in a family. And even though I've lived away from my family for a long time now, I grew up in a family that believed very, very deeply that Allah gave us a set of skills, a set of gifts, a set of opportunities, a set of blessings. And our role in this life was to make the most of it. My mum would always say to me, Yasmina, one day Allah is going to ask you, I gave you all of this. This was, you know, the share that I gave you, your gisma. What did you do with it? And I always hope that I'm working towards a good answer to that. And so that's something that keeps me going, is like, yes, there are lots and lots and lots of challenges, but I always come back to, actually, there are so many things that could have gone more wrong. There are so many things that Allah has protected me from, some that I don't even know about, most that I don't even know about, actually. And so I try to think about how can I use what I have been given to serve others. So, and I grew up in this family, and this was the spirit of my family. And so we were always going out and volunteering and doing these sorts of things. And when I was about 16 years old, I went to a conference called the Asia Pacific City Summit. There was 100 young people from around the Asia Pacific talking about the organizations they were interested in and these sorts of things. But one thing I noticed was people didn't want to work together. Okay, you had 3 different organizations working on domestic violence, and 4 different organizations working on substance abuse, and 2 different organizations, and everyone was like, oh, you should give us the funding, we know what we're doing, don't work with them, you know, their system is wrong, whatever. And I remember sitting back and thinking, aren't we all trying to help the same people? Aren't we all actually trying to do the same work? Why are we competing with each other rather than trying to pool our resources, rather than trying to find what is common between us? And I kept coming back to this idea that we were fighting each other rather than fighting, you know, the broader opponent, the broader enemy that had put us in this position in the first place. And so I pitched to the group. I said, why can't we set up, and this is also before Facebook, this is like in 2007, this is a long time, right? Before Twitter and all these sorts of things. I pitched to the group, I said, why don't we set up a network, some sort of structure that is all about getting people to work together? Okay, maybe we can set up an organization that's focused on building connection and collaboration. And of course, everyone was like, Yasmin, you're 16 years old. Do you have any idea what you're doing? Like, do you know what it is to run an organization? Do you have any idea? And I was like, well, no, meh, I'm going to do it anyway. Because there's nothing like telling a 16-year-old that they can't do something to make them really want to do it. Donc, I managed to convince 3 people out of the 100 that it was an idea worth listening to. And this is something that I think it's important to think about. You actually don't need to convince everybody. You don't need to convince everyone. You just need to convince a small group of people that believe in it just as much as you. And together, we set up something called Youth Without Borders. Youth Without Borders, our mission was to get young people to work together, to empower them to work together to help fix the problems in their community, right? And so it went from, we set up mobile libraries. We brought 9 different organizations in Indonesia to set up mobile libraries. We ran fundraising concerts for local activities. We ended up running a really big engineering camp for kids from backgrounds like myself who had never considered going to university, never entered the university. We brought them to the university and we did a whole camp and we said, look, people like us are here, you can be too. And we were really a bunch of teenagers, and many of those projects didn't work. But I think the projects that didn't work were just as useful in helping me figure out the way that I wanted to work. And what I took out of it the most was I'm pretty good at collaborating and finding compromises, but on some things there is a limit. So for example, we had when we ran our camp, it was the most successful project that we'd run, and it brought in a lot of money. And I brought in a young guy from outside the community, like a young white guy, to help us. And the second year, I gave him a bit more responsibility. I was like, you know, you seem to really care about this. Let me trust you with a little bit more responsibility. And after the camp, he came to me and he said to me, you know, Yassmin, I think this camp has become too successful for you. So what I propose is that I take over the camp, and you know, I set up a new organization, and I run the camp, and you and Youth Without Borders can go off and do your own thing. And I was like, ah ouais, vraiment, huh? Is this how it's gonna be? I see. And so there's two things that I want to really point to in this. One was that when you become successful, people will try to own what you're doing and will try to claim it for themselves. And you have to be strong enough in yourself to say, actually, no, we built this and we will continue to do it on our own terms rather than giving up the power. And number two, there are a lot of ways that you can compromise and collaborate and work together with people, but you have to be working with people that come from the same set of values. You have to be working with people that are actually interested in the same vision, because what his vision was something that was about making him seem better rather than actually empowering the community, right? Rather than actually building something for the community. Because if he wanted to build for the community, he would know that actually what he was proposing would not work for our community. And it was one of the first times where I really dug my heels in. I said, no, like this is, I mean, I wrote a very, very, very angry email, and then I put it in my draft and said, I'll come back to this because this is not something that anyone needs to read. But that's the story of Youth Without Borders. And I ran Youth Without Borders for 9 years. And when I was 25, I decided that I was no longer youth, technically. And moved on, and I ended up setting up something called Mumtaza, which was an organization that was focused around women of color and finding ways to bring women into positions of power and influence. And look, I can tell you all sorts of other things, but we only have a few minutes. So the other main thing that I want to leave you with, and to maybe plant the seed, maybe, I think we are living in a world and in a time where it can feel like we are constantly, our power is constantly being taken away, right? And I think there are kind of two parts to this. One is like economically and practically our power is being taken away, or legislatively our power is being taken, but also the stories that are told about us and the ways that we are framed and the language that's used. And I think I myself, as somebody who's been doing this work my whole entire life, I can feel that it is overwhelming. However, I want us to remember that firstly, we don't have to do any of this alone. Nobody does this work alone. My strength, yes, comes from myself and my faith, but it also comes from knowing that I'm working with incredible, mostly women, who are trying to make this world a better place. Many of you who are on this call today, many of you who are in Lallab, but we're all over the world and we're all doing our bit. And I think when I feel the most overwhelmed, that's the time when I most need to reach out to my sisters and to be like, hey, I need let me borrow some of your strength right now because I really need it. And so we don't remember that part of the success of those that are fighting us is they make us feel like we're alone, but we're not, and we never are. Our power comes in our collectivity. Our power comes in our community. Our power comes in leaning on each other and working together. And the second thing I want to leave with you is we do not have to play on their terms. Okay. Sarah and I actually briefly talked about this before I did this talk, because I grew up thinking that all I had to do was be the good Muslim girl. You know, if I was the good Black Muslim girl, it would be fine. They would accept me. I would be one of them. And it's not until you are at the same level in every way. In fact, you're better than them. You're better than they have ever been in their lives. You're better than all their ancestors. And yet still somehow they think that they are superior, or they think that they can bring you down, or they actually were never going to accept you in the first place. We have to decide for ourselves our terms, how we do this work on our terms, how we get justice on our terms. We have to decide what that looks like. We cannot play in the boundaries that they build for us, because those boundaries were never made for us to succeed. And the last thing I will say is, like, I don't know if I will see this work completed in my lifetime, but you know, I'm taking the baton from my parents and I'm passing it on to the next generation. And I think if we think of ourselves as, you know, part of a chain of folks who are doing this work, maybe we can take the pressure off a little bit and understand that even if we change the life of one or two people, then we've done something pretty incredible, mashallah. So good luck, bonne chance, and merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much, Yassmin. Thank you. So we have some questions that we wanted to ask you. So maybe the first one is that we already met like a few years ago, you know, and we remember with Lallab that you were having a hard time in Australia with I think the visibility that you get and all the work that you were doing against sexism, racism, and Islamophobia. And for us, it's still a real thing at Lallab to talk about mental health issues for Muslim women. So we wanted to know, like, how did you do, you know, to overcome all those obstacles, really in a psychological, physical, and material way? Yeah.
So I'll be really honest. It's not easy, and especially if you're somebody who is visibly Muslim or visibly talking about these issues or visibly outside what is the norm, it can take a real toll. And some of you may know, some of you may not know, but I went through quite a lot in the Australian context, maybe comparable to, I know you have folks like Rokhaya Diallo and people like this who go through a lot in the public sphere. And I ended up making the choice to leave Australia because it got to the point where it was not safe for me, physically or psychologically, to be there. And it took me a very long time before I was able to put myself back together. It took a lot of therapy. I remember about like halfway through 2017, I remember I was sitting in a toilet, in a public toilet somewhere, and I was feeling very sad. And then I was like, I don't remember the last time I was not sad. Maybe I should get a therapist. And I think, you know, I think that it's important to talk about this because I did have skills to take care of my mental health, but I also needed professional help. And I think it's important that we find people that can provide us professional help that we need when we need it. And I think it's okay for us to take the time out, because racism is not going anywhere. Islamophobia isn't going anywhere. You know, it will still be here. Sexism will still be here. When you could take a break for 10 years and come back and the stuff will still be here. Like, this is a lifetime's work. So it's important. You're not useful to the cause if you're broken and if you can't take care of yourself. You know, you have to take care of yourself at the same time as doing this work. And if it's too much, then give yourself permission to step aside, and even if it's just for a little while, because I mean, I want everyone to be safe and alive, and that's what I want for people, and that's what I want for myself. So I think that was the choice I made, and I also don't want my friends and I don't want my sisters to be martyrs to the cause. I would rather them be alive with me.
Thank you. And we wanted to know, like, we had several questions, but we wanted to know maybe do you have any book recommendation that helps you and inspire you? And also, like, because now, like, you were running a different organization, and now you are also an author. So in what way maybe the reappropriation of knowledge, the creation of utopias, and the emergence of powerful new voices, for example, in literature, in music, in art, is necessary today and important for Muslim women to help them build maybe new impact, new vision, new future to transform the society? So you were telling me that we need to be everywhere we want to build power. So can you just tell me more about it?
Yeah, it's interesting because as you say, I grew up very much doing grassroots community work, and now I'm in Paris for an artist residency. I'm spending my time being a writer, which is very different to what I was doing before. I was also working as an engineer, so it's a very different world. Part of what draws me to the world of writing is the power to create new worlds and to imagine what the world could look like. And I have a lot of fun. My books are for young teenagers, so like 10 to 13, 12 to 14-year-olds, the novels. And I love playing in that age group because anything is possible when you're 12 years old, because I get to look at really complex ideas through, I sneak them into books for younger people and get them to think about these things at an early age. And also, I mean, the book is being made into a television show, inshallah, which is super exciting for me. We all love television. I mean, most of us love. I love television, and all I want is to get little Muslim kids on television. That's written by us, telling the stories of the drama at the mosque and the drama at the Muslim school, and the uncle that says this and the grandma that says that. These are that was the joy of my childhood, and I want to share that. And I think, as much as there is pain and as much as there is struggle, there is also great joy in our communities. There is, my aunties are laughing all the time. Sometimes they're laughing at me, not at my jokes, but there's a lot of joy. And for us, in terms of like creating and building and maintaining and sustaining power, I mean, culture is an incredible place to build power and to create realities. In terms of books that I recommend, I mean, I'm reading a lot of very serious things at the moment, but a book that I think is really lovely if you haven't read is Bell Hooks' All About Love. I think it's a classic, timeless book. The book that I have just here that I've just started reading actually is called Revolutionary Feminisms. It was a collection of essays that were written by like Angela Davis and Ruth Wilson Gilmore, all during COVID. So very recent, but really, really fascinating. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, Yassmin.
Merci beaucoup.
I see really your incredible source of joy as a tool for resistance, liberation, and power. So thank you for sharing all this joy with us. Thank you for your brilliant and powerful talk. And thank you to Eve, Marie, and Elodia for the interpretation. And thank you so much, Lucy, for the English to French interpretation. It was just perfect. And yes, now we will have the next talk. So thank you, Yassmin.